Hi. Before we get into the show, I wanted to take a moment and say thank you. Whether you're a first-time listener or you followed us for a while now, we know you have choices, and we know it's a big world of social media. So thank you for making us a part of your day. Let's get into the show.
Like, I can't ever put one foot in on things, man. It's just, I think it's part of my addictive personality and just obsession with anything I get a hold of, and it's like, there's plenty of other things I'm like, man, that'd be cool to do. But I know if I'm in it, I'm like all in it, right? So it's like also having to balance, like, because I know this is my true passion, right? So it's like one side of it, you're like, okay, I don't want to sacrifice or take away from the time and effort and energy and motivation I put into archery, and also to be able to balance between family, with what I have, like yourself, family and kids, and 4 kids myself. So
on today's episode, we're going to talk to Jared Tarver. Jared is one of my good friends and hunting partners, and he also has a ton of knowledge when it comes to hunting gear. On today's episode, we're going to talk to Jared Tarver. Jared is my good friend and hunting partner, and he's also a wealth of knowledge when it comes to hunting gear. He's tried, used, and ran a lot of different hunting gear in the past several seasons, but he's also got an interesting story about how archery and how pouring himself into this sport changed his life. Really excited to talk to Jared. Really excited to share this episode. So stay tuned. Jared Tarver, welcome to the podcast, sir. Been trying to get you on for a few weeks now. Glad the schedule's aligned and we could actually catch up. You're a busy man, and it's a busy time for the industry that you're in, the industry that I'm in too. So glad that we're having some time to speak today.
Yeah, no, glad to do it. And sorry it took so long, but like you said, it's a crazy world we live in, and then all the stuff we love to do, and then all the stuff we have to do that can't put off,
Yeah, you got to put in the work now to make the disposable income to use it during hunting season.
Yeah.
So I'm living with the same strategy.
Yeah, still trying to figure out a way to do this without having to do that. But fortunately, this beautiful addiction we have is a little costly,
Yeah, not cheap, is it?
Especially
it's not getting any cheaper either. Cool, man. Well, I wanted to have you on because you and I have become friends over the last few years. You've been a big influence on a lot of things, the way that I bow hunt and the attention to detail, and definitely in gear and specs and everything like that. So I consider you to be an authority on some of the archery things that we do, especially when it comes to bow tuning and gear. So, and then saddle hunting too. So in the episode today, I wanted to talk about kind of who you are, how you got started with bow hunting, maybe your backstory, and then we'll get into saddle hunting and kind of, your journey into that, kind of where you started from, and then, what you're getting ready for the season. So why don't you start by giving us, your backstory, who you are and where you're from.
Yeah, like I said, Jared Tarver. Live here in Houston, Texas area most of my life. So I say I'm from Houston. I was actually born in Louisiana. Only lived there for a short time before my family relocated over here to this area when I was quite young. Really, my dad was in law enforcement, traveled a lot, and didn't actually do a lot of outdoors stuff growing up as a kid. I was, I'll be truth, just more of a mama's boy, and but always had a yearning for the outdoors. My grandpa ran a cattle farm, and it was one of my favorite childhood memories of mine was getting to go out to his ranches and take the 22 out back and go shoot whatever birds that were floating around, or squirrels, or fishing in the ponds. So I just I've always loved being outside, whether it was just being in the woods being on, four-wheelers or just roaming around. It's just something I think you have in your DNA or your blood, right?
Mhm.
But fast forward many, many, many years, I guess, once I got to the point to kind of do that on my own, since I wasn't really brought up doing it. Actually, and I kind of love to tell my story because it was really driven by a very specific thing per se. So I'm actually a recovering alcoholic, and I'm actually like really proud to talk about that because of what I've achieved since I've literally turned my life in a 180-degree direction. Been into archery about 10 years, and I'll actually have 10 years of sobriety next year. And I attribute, a lot, or if not all, of what I've achieved in my life from sobriety and to actually two things: my wife and archery. When I decided to make that change in my life, put the bottle down and actually put the work in and make the change. Right about that same time, one of our good friends, David Villarreal, he was into bow hunting and we worked together at the time. And I was in a program for Alcoholics Anonymous. And that was kind of one of the main things that you go through in the program is to, not only kind of find a higher power in a different direction, but it's to also kind of redirect that addictive behavior. So I sure did redirect that addictive behavior and went down to an archery shop with David one day and picked up a bow. Fell in love with it and was addicted to it from day one. I got a pretty nice little piece of property where I live, out here in north of Houston with 3 acres on it. So it was just immediately just it really just immediately engulfed me. And the ability, number one, that was just something that I could just completely and absolutely, put all my focus into. And it was also convenient because I could come home every day after work, as you know, in our line of work and logistics, it's stressful, it's busy. And, I could get out of the truck, grab the bow, walk out in the yard, whether just shoot a few arrows or shoot a few dozen. It was just the convenience, I think, was also what, like, I can't ever put one foot in on things, man. It's just, I think it's
Yeah.
part of my addictive personality and just obsession with anything I get a hold of, and it's like, there's plenty of other things I'm like, man, that'd be cool to do. But I know if I'm in it, I'm like all in it, right? So it's like also
Yeah.
having to balance, like, because I know this is my true passion, right? So it's like at one chance, one side of it, you're like, okay, I don't want to sacrifice or take away from the time and effort and energy and motivation I put into archery, and also to be able to balance between family, with what I have, like yourself, family and
Mhm.
kids, and 4 kids myself. So really just also kind of captured me too. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. From the start, I bought I think my first bow with like a Mission by Matthews. I tried to go like budget bow, and we kind of still laugh about it to this day because I know myself. I'm like a all or nothing type of person, right? Like there's no, it's all throttle, all go. There's no middle gear. So I think I had that first bow for about 30 days. Um, I dry fired it, so I learned that mistake. Luckily on a little bit cheaper bow. Don't draw your bow back without an arrow in it. And I was back down at the bow shop in about 30 days and bought another newer, nicer, top of the line Matthews bow with all the top of the line equipment and best stuff that you could get because it's just a fun part of it for me too. I'm really into the gear, really into the tech, the technology really of it all. So I really enjoy that part of it as well. So yeah, after that, got into it, learned how to shoot, spent a lot of time at the local archery range, set up some targets in my yard. Um, just really, engulfed myself into it, and caught onto it pretty quick. And I was actually pretty good, actually, yet humble, but, you know, um, from the start, I was actually pretty good. And I was like, I think I really, not only do I enjoy this and I like this, but I think I'm actually pretty good at it. So it was also rewarding, right? In many ways. Um, then it was the part, okay, how do I go hunt with this thing? Because that was my goal, right? just to get in the woods and go hunt. So as you know, we live in Texas, so there's not a lot of public ground that you can just go walk onto. A little bit here and there, but luckily I had my wife's uncle, who I really credit a lot too for kind of getting me into the hunting aspect of it. And he had a deer lease and he was getting off a deer lease at the time. We lease a lot of property out here in Texas, right? Everybody's got to own everything out here. So um, timing just worked out. He was getting off a lease, getting on a new lease. He called me up, said, "Hey, found a new place. You want to get on a lease?" That was out in kind of the hill country, more western in Texas, up in a little bit past Fredericksburg, out in Mason, beautiful part of Texas. Got on my first lease out there with a few other guys. Actually, we're all rifle hunters, but I didn't care. I just wanted a tree and some deer and just figure this thing out, right? So yeah, that was fun, because I didn't really I was really kind of doing it on my own too, right? Best I could learn, watching YouTube, watching podcasts and all the stuff that we have at our fingertips now, which is absolutely wonderful, right? Because it's so accessible.
Mhm.
So I did a lot of homework and I did a lot of hours in the woods and a lot of hours in the tree. And yeah, it was quite a journey from the start, just kind of getting into it. And then, yeah, it's been fun. Obviously, still hunt around Texas. I'm on a different lease with you now, which is awesome, and I'm looking really forward to that this year. Just getting off a previous lease that was also out in the hill country area, and quite successful out there too. Which we probably get into a little bit later of how and
Mhm.
why, and kind of how I learned how to be a little bit more successful with what we have in the environment we're in. And yeah, and just look back to at the same time and I'm like, shit, 10 years, it's flown by. Time flies, right? So yeah, it's and outside of that, I actually also kind of a bit like yourself, we hunt a lot in Texas and there's always that desire to venture on, venture further, venture into areas we haven't been to before. So
Mhm.
been fortunate enough too to spend a bit of time out in the Midwest, up in Indiana, like yourself, doing
Mhm.
some awesome whitetail hunting. Also in Kansas a bit, with a little bit of success. Not as much time as I've liked to have spent up there so far, but we'll definitely be back and making just great memories along the way, making great friends. I think that's the other awesome part of it too. Is just you build a different level of camaraderie and friendship. And just I don't want to call it a sport or a hobby, but really it's the lifestyle
Yeah.
that this is, right? So
Yeah.
it's quite unique, and that those of us that are in it, you get it, right? And I often find myself trying to explain that to people that are not, and it's kind of hard to explain, to put in words, right? The passion
Yeah,
that we
it
have for
definitely,
it. So
yeah, definitely is, man. And I think you accurately describe it as a lifestyle. It's way much more than a sport or a hobby. Sport is something that usually has very small seasons, which hunting does have seasons, but if you're going to be any good at this, then you have to do it, year round pretty much, whether you're shooting, competitively for, archery tournaments or you're shooting 3D archery or just, practicing during the off season. And then, you know, I'm not getting any younger either. I'm 47. And so about 2 years ago, my metabolism started letting me down and my stamina started dropping off. And so last season, really ran out of gas and I kind of, fell into the part where, okay, now I have to start exercising and training in a different way. So, and I know that you've, started training in a very specific way too for, Spartan races and other things too. But before we get into that and then the adventure hunting part of it, I wanted to, you know, say congratulations, man, on 10 years. That's not an easy thing to go through and not something that, most people talk about. I think it's really cool that you focused, your effort and your attention into something like this. Um, and like you said, we're immediately good at it. I'm a little jealous because I was not immediately good at it. I'm still not good at it, which is why it's good to have friends like you and David to kind of keep me on the straight and narrow. But dude, the passion for it is, those of us who do this and those of us who have gotten into it and kind of, gone full bore into it with gear and time and everything else. I enjoy this so much, as you do. We're on the lease together now in a different place. We've hunted together for the past few years, gone to total archery challenges for the past few years. And it's, this is our thing, my thing. And I know it like yours too. Like you're not a fisherman on the side, or you don't paint birdhouses or anything like that. This is archery and bow hunting. Pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's for me. It's like I can't ever put one foot in on things, man. It's just I think it's
Yeah.
part of my addictive personality and just obsession with anything I get a hold of, and it's like there's plenty of other things I'm like, man, that'd be cool to do. But I know if I'm in it, I'm like all in it, right? So it's like also
Yeah.
having to balance, like, because I know this is my true passion, right? So it's like at one side of it, you're like, okay, I don't want to sacrifice or take away from the time and effort and energy and motivation I put into archery, and also to be able to balance between family, with what I have, like yourself, family and
Mhm.
kids, and 4 kids myself. So yeah, it's a lot to balance, then of course the job that allows us to kind of pay for and sustain the lifestyle we have and the hobbies we have and whatnot. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
always a
So
task.
we're recording this episode on a Sunday, and Sundays are the days where I usually around 12:30 or 1 p.m., kind of middle of the day, I'll go to a coffee shop and sit and kind of plan out my week. And I have to do that because the careers that we have, we're in similar industry, not the exact same one, but very similar in logistics and supporting oil and gas, construction, and different industries. But it's very demanding. And then we both have families, and then we both want to dedicate time, to do things like this. And so it's a lot, man. It's hard to juggle. I kind of envy the guys that get to go out west and spend 2-3 weeks doing that and do all the things and kind of make a living out of doing this. But I also, all the friends that I have that hunt, do the same things that we do. They're trying to bank their PTO time. They're trying to save up to buy a new bow or the latest piece of tech. And then we'll get into gear later on, because you're a kind of a gear aficionado and
Yeah, I
have
think
minds to a lot of things too.
too, and like which makes me think of, when I had to kind of balance a lot of this earlier on was how can I afford myself more time to do this? And one of the
Mhm.
big things that I did was give my, the best I could, a couple of my kids into it,
Mhm.
hunting with me, like I know yourself, that you do as well. And also my wife, I took her out on my first deer lease, first time she went deer hunting. I brought her out and gave her my son's 243, and she shot 3 deer in one sitting. And here it is mid-December, and it's I think this was my first year bow hunting too, right? And I was hard in, like, I was out there, days and days and hours and had not shot a single deer, just trying to figure this thing out. And bring her out, put her in a rifle blind, and she shoots 3 deer in one sitting. Okay, I guess the guy started skinning deer. Um, look at her and I'm like, okay, that's the first and last time you're rifle hunting, because when we get back home, we're going to buy you a bow, which we
Yeah.
did. So actually, that's another cool thing. My wife's not as obsessed and into it as I am, but she does bow hunt, which is cool. So we do it together, right? And she also, by doing that, she understands. Like
Yeah.
she gets it. Like I kind of mentioned before, where it's hard for some people that don't do it to get it.
Yeah.
Just the adrenaline, the excitement, there's just the whole overall obsession with it out of it. So that's
The emotional roller coaster in my
yeah,
case, the anger, the disappointment, the
yeah.
sorrow.
Also helps to understand a little bit how much some of the stuff costs too, because she did buy her own first bow, I will say, which I give her a lot of
Yeah.
credit for. She would not let me buy it for her. She's like, if I'm gonna do this, I'm buying it myself. She got I think her first bow with the Matthews, one of the female version solo cams, like HTX, sweet little bow, right? And she's shooting like a
Yeah.
Matthews Prima now, but she shoots some good stuff too, and she'll kill some deer, man. Like I gotta hand it to her. I'll practice all year round, shoot tack out in the yard, hours on end, getting ate up by mosquitoes and, just she'll pick up the bow 2 weeks before deer season, go jump in the stand or the blind, and 20 yards done.
I wish I could do that, man. Not
She's
anymore.
got a couple
Where's the
bucks on the wall that I've mounted for her, and they rival some of mine too. So,
well, I probably will attest some of that too, man, to your preparation and your attention to detail, and probably setting up some of these scenarios and places for her to hunt too. Because I know you and I have gotten on this lease together, and we've worked on the place a few times now, and I'm so excited for deer season. I think we have our work cut out for us with hogs, which is, kind of a love-hate relationship. They're great to have something to shoot at, but they're also such a menace when it comes to trying to grow deer and manage deer on a mid-size to a smaller piece of property. So we're not as bad as I was on another lease, but we definitely got plenty to shoot at on the first days that we go out there with bows. So we look forward to that.
Definitely an added dynamic down here in Texas for sure, because there's no shortage.
Absolutely.
It's out of control, literally.
It is way out of control, and I'm still kind of curious on what else could happen or what else could come along to kind of curb this or grow it a little bit better. The landowner with the lease that we have is pretty unique in the fact that they have somebody that they call to come do this on a somewhat semi-regular basis. And based on what they've told us, the person has a thermal drone. They fly it, locate them, run up on them on an electric scooter, and then shoot them with a suppressed rifle, which sounds pretty fun. But
that's like what a lot of people don't even know, that pig extermination is like a financial business down here in Texas.
Sure is.
Out of control. So people that have property, that own the property like what we're on, which is actually a financial pecan farm, right? So they have revenue stream, and they want to make sure that they're not damaged, and these pigs destroy everything. So they will pay people to come in with, like you say, high-tech equipment, thermal drones and night vision and electric carts and stuff to just try to wipe these things out, and you still can't even keep up with them. So
it goes in waves, man. You can run them off for a while, and then a new sounder will show up, and they'll get embedded until you kind of shoot them off again. They are fun to bow hunt, but they're also, unless you have very specific way to hunt them, like the last lease that I was on where we went wrong is we didn't have a lot of deer on the place because it's like East Texas pine country. Like the area was not the best for whitetail deer. It was phenomenal for feral hogs because there were like bumper crops of these things. And so we put up probably 10 to 12 feeders on this property. It was like 400-ish acres. A lot of it was kind of clear cut that had started growing back into planted like pine plantations. Had a couple of areas lowland with a couple of creeks and hardwood stuff or whatever. And that's usually where the deer would be. But the hogs got so bad that they would run a circuit throughout the whole property. There were like 2 or 3 sounders of them, and they would just go from feeder to feeder to feeder to feeder to feeder. And then once you would pattern a sounder of them, you could shoot probably, I think I shot 6 the last season that we were on that lease last year. I shot 6 hogs off of one feeder at like 3 or 4 different times. And so it was great for that, but it got to be such a nuisance that they were reproducing at such a pace that you couldn't kill them fast enough. And so it ended up like we didn't see hardly any deer last year. We saw a couple of does and like different stuff. And so that was one of the reasons why we got off the place, is it was just kind of a, for the money that we were spending and the effort that we were putting into it, there was no return on whitetail deer, unfortunately.
Yeah, they're great when you're intending to pig hunt, but they definitely they run the deer off, man. It's
sure do.
Especially they come through in such big packs, man, like they do. It's crazy.
Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the show. Another way you can support us is to visit our website at www.americanarcheryandbowhunting.com. On our website, you'll find blog posts, link to our social media and podcast. You'll also find some really cool merch like this American Archery and Bowhunting t-shirt. We also have caps, mugs, and different types of merchandise we'll be adding along the way. So go check us out at www.americanarcheryandbowhunting.com. Let's get back to the show. Well, listen, you and I both are saddle hunters, and this kind of touches on our emerging interest to travel hunt and adventure hunt. You and I both have had the pleasure of hunting in Indiana in the Midwest, and hunting from saddles there. Last year was my first true year of really saddle hunting. The year before, I kind of bought a cheap entry level saddle, and I had some sticks that were terrible and weighed a ton, and I didn't know really what I was doing, and so I didn't really commit to do it all that much. Last year, I got some better gear, and got a little farther into it. But I think you've gone the next step into this season. And before we get into the gear that you're running now, kind of explain your back history with stand hunting, and then how you transition that into mobile hunting with stands, and then from stands to saddles now, and kind of what you prefer.
Yeah, so really, I mean, because right down here in Texas, no qualms about it. We get to use feeders. So it's a
Mhm.
great, easy button, right? You go out to the lease, you sit in the blind or in a stand, and you sit over the feeder. And that's what I did. That's kind of just what you do down here, especially when you get into hunting, right? It's just kind of what everybody does. For me, I got bored.
Yeah.
And I hunt a lot, right? And I would just get so tired of going and sitting in the same spot and looking at the same trees and the same squirrels. Like literally, you could like start to recognize the squirrels that come out and eat off the feeder, right? And can't remember exactly how many years ago, but when the kind of the reemergence of saddle hunting and mobile hunting all kind of spiked up in the industry, it obviously caught my eye. And started watching some videos and product videos and some obviously a lot of good hunting shows on YouTube. And I'm like, first thing that struck out to me was like, man, this looks fun. It's all kind of intertwined in the adventure, the unknown, right? The extra challenge, which we're already putting ourselves up against enough, a challenge, which is kind of what we're into this archery thing to begin with, right? So
Mhm.
so just started kind of trying out some stuff. And also where I was hunting at the time, is out in the hill country in Texas. And the other challenge there is just it's not big timber, right? You got scrubby oak trees. They ain't a straight limb on the thing. The trunks aren't straight,
No, nothing straight.
so I got into, some of my, mobile tree stand setups and trying to kind of mobile hunt out of some of my tree like lock-on stands. I had some of the early, old school lone wolf stands, which were pretty packable and not bad. But the problem with that is you could never find the right tree to hang a stand on where you really wanted to hunt, whether you could, scout out a good trail or some good pattern or some good sign, right?
Mm.
Just a good spot in general. So I was like, put a tree up in a stand and it's stand up in a tree and it's like, like this. I'm not real comfortable sit for a few hours, right? Not, it's kind of hard to be still. So when the saddle thing kind of kicked up, and this wasn't a new thing, but it was just kind of, I call it a reemergence, right? In the industry, it really caught my eye because I was like, okay, I could do something with that.
Mm.
So that was early on when, kind of Tethered kicked out a lot of the cool marketing stuff and, burst into the scene. So I bought some of their gear and started playing around with it out on my deer lease, which was a blast because then I could get in these little scrubby oak trees, and maybe only be 10 foot off the ground, but
Mhm.
actually be comfortable and get into the right spots. And it was so amazing to me from the start, right? That it immediately changed my success, right? I mean, we go and sit by a feeder all day down here and put meat in the freezer, which is great, right? Shooting does, filling tags. But I had not really shot a good buck yet, a couple decent bucks until I got mobile and actually
Mhm.
figured out how I could be mobile effectively.
Yeah.
Um, and it actually even took about a year or two, a couple seasons, and I kind of clicked, and I'm like, wow, like talking with some of the guys on my lease and talking to people, I'm like, my best bucks weren't shot off a feeder. Once I actually realized that even further, it was like even further convincing. It was like, okay, there's something here. Like the stuff on the YouTube videos and the marketing, for these companies is not just a scheme. Like it's real stuff that these guys are doing and using, right? And like we all do, you got to kind of convince yourself also, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, like I said, is not only more fun because it was just, you moving around, more of a challenge, more exciting, a little more unknown. But then I saw the success, right? Which is what we all look for, right?
Mhm.
To be more successful and while we're doing it. And then obviously too, you know, did start doing a little bit more public land hunting in the Houston area. So aside from the deer leases I'm on, kind of in tandem with that, and then doing a bit more of the mobile hunting on the deer leases, and then getting in the saddle hunting, I actually started to locate and figure out some public ground that's kind of closer to home, right? Because as you know, right, we live in North Houston. I live in North Houston area. You live South Houston area, right? And we don't hunt by our house. So the deer
Mhm.
leases that I'm on that were the previous deer leases on were 4 to 5 hour drive one way from my house. So, you know, yeah, it wasn't somewhere you could just bomb into after work or, you know, just go out for the morning. And so I was just also at the same time looking like, how can I spend more time in the woods? So I found out some public grounds more near my home, which is probably just like about a 45 minute to an hour drive, which actually to
Mhm.
some people probably sounds like a long ways, but this actually put some hunting grounds within reach that I could just kind of dive into and do a morning hunt or go hunt all day and come home. You know, it wasn't a whole weekend or week long thing, right? So, which also just tied perfectly in with kind of the style of hunting that I was doing. And it was actually more applicable too, because as you know, around where we live, in these areas where there is a little bit of public ground, it is a lot bigger timber, right? So bigger trees, even more ideal and conducive for hunting with, you know, tree stands or saddle equipment, which
Mhm.
have made it even more fun, right? Because then there was more options, more spots, more trees, you know, more conducive to what type of hunting I was doing, which was then also kind of added another cooler and funner unknown element to it as well, which I think is kind of what it all boils back to is just what can we do to put us in the woods or put us in the trees for more amount of time, you know, and obviously, hopefully at the end of all that kind of increase our success.
Yeah, the success part of it's definitely as I've gotten a little bit older and a little bit wiser, I would say, the success part of it changes based on the paradigm about what hunting really is nowadays. I mean, I think most people probably attribute hunting to the you prepare an area and go and sit and wait for the deer to show up. The type of hunting that I think I'm into now that you're into is okay, we're going to go find where the deer live, and then we're going to set up on the deer, and then we're going to hunt the deer. I
Yep.
think that's the true essence of truly hunting is finding, you know, what they're eating, where they're bedding, where they're traveling, all these other things. And that could change from day to day or week to week based on,
Oh,
you know, the dynamics of the area, if there's a river bottom, you know, floods, water up or down, you know,
time of the year,
acorn
time of the
crop,
month.
time of the year, rut,
Yeah.
all these different things. And so my paradigm has definitely shifted. I would say probably 2 years ago, I put all my effort into setting up feeders and trying to find a place where the deer would intersect them. And that was usually it. In the last couple of years, I've, you know, had this paradigm shift about finding the deer. And then that also too kind of kicked off this desire to travel hunt more, to go to different areas, because as you mentioned, we live in a metro area with 5 million people. All 5 million of them don't hunt, but it sure feels like it.
Yeah.
Around the little bit of public land there is, you know, Texas doesn't have a ton of public land. There's little pockets of it here or there, and the ones that are near where we live usually get inundated with people, especially during gun season. Not so much during archery season, but when gun season kicks up, it's the Orange Army. Uh,
Yeah.
is what we'd like to say. The lease that we're on now, a little bit closer. It's only 3.5 hours away, but it's still like you got to be committed to go spend a couple of days there. You're not going to drive over there and hunt one day and then drive back. If you
Yeah.
do, you're going to be exhausted and you're probably going to be disappointed because it will not be a very fun outing. But I think that's my plan going into this season's to kind of go spend 3, 4, 5 days at a time. And then as we go along, there's places I think that we've picked out. I know there's a place in Arkansas that I've scouted and have some cameras up. It's public, you know, in a WMA, and then some U.S. forestry land too. We've got a couple places in Mississippi. Thinking about going to Missouri if I could pull it off, but that's, you know, definitely travel hunting. And then next year, try to break off and head out west and hunt a mule deer somewhere. To go back to saddle hunting
Yeah.
for just a moment. So you went from lock-on stands. What you remember the first lock-on stand that you bought and what it was?
First lock-on stand I bought actually was one of the OG Lone Wolf lock-on
Mhm.
Assault 2
Gotcha. Okay.
lock-on stand, which is a great stand. Actually, I still have that stand to this day. And then actually even I even have some of the, Lone Wolf custom gear stuff, which I have,
Mhm.
actually two of those lock-on stands. I kind of consider all this stuff like an arsenal, right? How you have
Mhm.
your preferred methods and there's sometimes, you need other methods, right? So
Mhm.
uh, I think my primary preferred method is definitely saddle hunting, but I do have keep a couple lock-on stands for the right scenarios or just the right situation or depending where you're at. It's a toolbox, right?
Yeah. So you made the transition from lock-on stands to saddle hunting, what, 3 years ago? Is that right?
Yeah, probably 4 years ago or so.
Gotcha. And you started out with tethered stuff?
Yeah, I picked up some tethered stuff first. Tried a lot of stuff. So goodness, I even have to try to remember all the stuff I try. Think that's why you guys love being friends with me because I'm the sucker that buys all the stuff and likes to try it out and test it out. And I have a lot of good hand-me-downs too.
Yeah, it's definitely an added benefit, Jared, to get the gently used equipment.
Insight knowledge too, but I enjoy that. I just like testing out new stuff. And then I think I had some trophy line stuff. I picked up some of their stuff a couple years ago, which was some good stuff. Their saddles, platform. I have also then kind of post trophy line. There's a manufacturer in Texas, this company called TX5, which kind of caught my eye because we're from Texas. So I'm like, how
Mhm.
cool is this? There's a guy in Texas that's making custom saddles and custom saddle gear and, private owned business, small business, making awesome, like phenomenal quality gear. So I bought some of his stuff and loved it. Still love it to this day, which then, which so interestingly, actually, then kind of fast forward, which was then a couple of years ago, that company TX5 was then acquired or merged with Latitude Outdoors that we know that everybody knows of today.
Mhm.
So the gentleman that ran TX5 joined forces with Latitude. He's their lead product designer. Latitude made some great stuff before that, and they make some even better stuff now because this guy's just he's got a niche for making good quality saddle gear. So I've picked up a bunch of Latitude stuff over the past year or so, maybe
Mhm.
year and a half. Looking really forward to trying out some of their new saddles they released this year once we get out in the woods here in a couple weeks, specifically the Lone Star saddle that Latitude makes, which was kind of a rendition of the TX5 custom saddle that I had before with the
Mhm.
Latitude logo on it and a few upgrades and improvements or changes or tweaks, and then also released their new Method 3 two-panel saddle, which I've actually never used a two-panel saddle before. It's something that's kind of all caught my eye, but just something I never tried. So I picked up the Method 3 two-panel saddle as well by Latitude this year. And man, I got to tell you, like I got actually three Latitude saddles to try out this year. I got their Maverick, which is their ultralight minimalist saddle, just, especially down here in the hot weather, just for quick hunts.
Mhm.
Real light, real simple, minimalist design. And then their Lone Star, which is what they call their Sadillac, right? Proper name for it because it's got all the bells and whistles, super comfortable, single panel saddle. And then most recently, I picked up, like I said, that Method 3, which is our two-panel saddle. And man, I'm excited to try all of them out. But I gotta say that the Method 3, that two-panel saddle, I played around with it in the yard a little bit, and man, it's comfortable.
Yeah.
It's comfortable, and not only that, but the features in what they included on the saddle as far as the just the overall functionality of it is pretty awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to get that stuff out in the woods and play around with it here pretty soon.
Yeah. Yeah. I enjoy saddle hunting. Like I told you, I started out with a really cheap, I wouldn't even call it entry level. I would call it like price point, cheap level, like the cheapest one you could possibly get. I won't name it.
Okay,
So I was the sucker that bought the cheap one. But my thought was, I'm gonna try this, and if it sucks, it won't be heartbreaking that I spent hundreds of dollars. It'll just be something I could throw in a drawer, and if I need it later, whatever, I could sell it
Oh
on
yeah.
eBay.
Easy, man. With a saddle, sticks, and a stand, you for high quality top end gear, you can be in $1,000 like
Yeah.
quick,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's kind of the other thing on some of this Latitude stuff I picked up too that I'm excited to test out. I also got a set of their Carbon SS sticks, which I'm really excited to test those out. I've tested them out in the yard a little bit, preseason, and they seem incredibly awesome, super lightweight, very durable and strong, very, very easy securement system to the tree. And then also one of their profile platforms, which is also seems pretty awesome. Just some of the little things that each of these companies do, like we always say about all the companies of the stuff we use, just to give it a little different edge, or a little bit different feature rich or more comfort or more portability or just to
Mhm.
make it a little bit lighter, right? Just those little things they do, which are always kind of always what catches my eye too.
Yeah.
So
The next saddle that I'll tell you why I'm sharing this and make a point and then get your feedback on it. But the next saddle that I got was actually a trophy line, which is like worlds different than the saddle I had before that was a piece of junk. I probably could have fashioned something out of some rope that I got from the hardware store and been more comfortable than what that was. Trophy line saddle that I have that I got next was definitely a step up. The only thing that I'm struggling, well, there's two things I struggle with it. It's a little bit heavy, and then the connectors on it they won't cinch down. You can cinch them
yeah,
down, like specifically on the
the
belt
weight
and on my
thing.
waist.
Yeah.
And so when I go to hike in somewhere and I have this thing on, I cinch it down to keep it, up and keep it taut. And then as I start walking, it starts sagging down and dragging down, my pants and everything else that's under it. And so I actually have to cinch it down and then tie like a couple of loop knots in the belt to try to keep it like snug. And it's still based on the webbing and the material that it is, it still kind of slips. So I haven't figured out how to quite deal with that yet. I think I'm going to upgrade saddles. Well, I know I am. I'm just going to do it probably later in the year or maybe even after the season's over. I'm going to try
Well,
to
I got
make it
three
through.
new ones, and I'm sure you'll be testing one of those three out here before
I'll
long.
test I'll test one of yours and then we'll give feedback on the pros and cons of each one. But
Good point on that on the
yeah,
belt though, because that is a problem, and it is a problem that I faced, right? And it is
yeah,
just freaking annoying when especially when you're going 3 miles deep in the woods, and the whole way in you're fighting to keep this thing on your waist. I mean,
right.
verbally to me, I like to wear my gear in. I don't like to
Mhm,
put it in the bag and like get dressed at the bottom of the tree, right? That's my preference. And
mhm,
yeah, it would just drive me crazy with these belts and these buckles and all these saddles that put these fancy buckles on it. It's specifically, which they look cool and they're easy to attach and detach, but they don't do their job, right? They don't
mhm,
stay secured. And that's actually things on these, one of the features on the Latitude line of saddles that I absolutely love. And at first look, I was kind of questionable because they just use a rope belt with a Prusik knot. And I'm thinking, okay, well, they're probably just trying to maybe save a little bit of money in manufacturing costs, or whatever. But point being, it stays tight and it's comfortable.
mhm.
It does not come loose. And it is lighter. So maybe they do save a little bit of money in manufacturing costs, good to them. But if it works better, then hey, I'm on board. But one of the features that I really, really like about those Latitude saddles,
Very cool.
no more feeling like your pants are falling down when you fall walking into the
Yeah,
woods.
I hate it so bad, man. That's one of the most annoying things because I do the same. I get, geared up, and then the only thing that I will do when I get to the bottom of the tree or when I get in the tree that's different is I'll like have just my base layer on when I walk in. And if
Yeah,
it's going to be cold, like it definitely in Indiana, you walk in, work up a sweat. I would sit in the tree maybe 20, 30 minutes, and then I would start putting a layer on as I kind of started, the sweat started drying up a little bit or I started getting a little cooler. I would put a layer on, and then probably an hour into it, I would be base layer, hoodie, and then jacket over it. And then I would be good for the rest of the sit. And then when I got ready to come out, I'd peel all the layers off and put them in my pack, jacket, then hoodie, then everything else on top of it, kind of in a system, and then hike out, so I wouldn't sweat through my clothes again. But I wanted to say is it Latitude that makes suspenders for saddles?
Quite a
Or is
few
it
of the
another company?
manufacturers do. I think most from what I see these days make some sort of suspender mechanism.
Yeah.
Which to me, that's yeah, great. But then I don't know, my opinion. It's like, well, damn, if you got to put suspenders on, it's just more gear on top of gear on top of
Yeah.
gear. Yeah, man. No offense to the suspender guys out there, not for me. But yes, that is available, and most of the manufacturers make that, as from what I see these days.
Interested to go down that path. Maybe I'll get a set for the trophy line to get me through the season, and then look to upgrade now. The way that not only saddles, but all of the hunting gear is kind of going in a pretty rapid clip, man, for broadheads, for bow accessories, and definitely platform sticks, gear, clothing, all this other stuff. It's evolving pretty quick.
Oh yeah,
So it has been interesting the past few years to see the way that these companies have marketed their materials, and then the little bit of the innovations along the way with making it more durable or lighter, more mobile. That's been the biggest thing I could tell here.
every single year I say I have plenty of equipment that I love, and I say I'm keeping this. I'm going to keep using this because I love it, and there's no way that it can be any better. And then I blink my eye, and somebody comes out with something that just has just one little, maybe just one little feature, like like the belt is a great example. Just one little feature that I'm like, it fixes a problem, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I gotta try it out.
Yeah. We're definitely ideal customers, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Whether it be the gear, the bows, the arrows, the whatever, all of it, all the above. The clothing now too. I mean, it's gotten so technical, which I love that aspect as well. It's I remember the days when, you had, you feel like you had to wear 40 pounds of clothes to stay warm in the tree for a couple hours, and some of the stuff, technical clothing a lot of these companies are making now that are, it's mind blowing. Some of the fabrics and features that they have, that can carry you through, whether it be
Yeah.
hot or cold, which we deal with a lot of the both down here in Texas, which it's always a challenge because you can hunt in the morning and it'll be 38 degrees outside, humid and cold. And in the evening, it's 75 degrees. So in one day, you're like spreading 3 seasons basically.
Yeah. The saying that I've heard since I moved here is that if you don't like the weather, just wait. It's going to change, and you'll get literally all 4 seasons in a week. That's happened several times in the past 7-8 years that I've lived here. Pretty interesting. Well, the gear part's definitely something I want to talk further about. We can make a whole nother episode out of that. We're out of time for this episode today, so I appreciate you making time for me and coming on. Enjoy, obviously, hanging out with you and looking forward to the season and hunting together. You're on social media. Where can people find you?
Mostly on Instagram, Tarver_elevated pursuit.
Very cool, man. Well, Jared, much appreciated.
Cool.
Catch
Thank
you on the next episode.
Appreciate it, John. It's a good time.
Thanks for joining the podcast. And don't forget, if you haven't already, make sure to go follow us on social media. We can be found on YouTube at American Archery and Bowhunting, as well as Instagram and TikTok. Also, if you've enjoyed the podcast, please don't forget to leave us a rating and drop a comment in the episode. Thanks, and see you next time.